Abraham Lincoln warned that the philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will be the philosophy of government in the next. Would you like to know what's being taught in today's classrooms? Welcome to Say What? With attorney Mark Schneider and Pastor George Rosca Jr. They'll explore the issues facing children, parents, and society as a result of the public schools and the forces behind them. Say What is the radio program of Protect Our Kids, which seeks to inform and equip concerned citizens about the looming crisis in American education. So listen in as your hosts, Mark Schneider and George Rosca Jr., unpack the issues and organizations affecting our children. And now here's your hosts, Mark Schneider and George Rosca Jr.
Hello, everyone. I'm George Rosca.
And I'm Mark Schneider.
And we want to welcome you to today's episode 89 of Say What, where we talk about the threats to our children in the public school system, including the astronomical rise of the educational bureaucracy that is absolutely suffocating the life out of what was once one of America's greatest institutions, the public education system.
That's right, George. You know, the administrative state that runs our public education system is over a century old, well established, deeply entrenched, and has single-handedly been responsible for the destruction of our public education system. That's a strong statement to make, I know, but we've got some very interesting evidence that you've recently discovered.
We definitely do. And the whole idea about this podcast, about the rise of the administrative state in education, was instigated by the president of Hillsdale College,
Larry Arnn.
Larry Arnn, a wonderful man, and he recently wrote an article in their newsletter called Imprimis, and he put this graph that just shocked me. And this graph looks at the percent growth of population in public schools between the year 2000 and 2019. So 20 years, right? Looking at the growth, the percentage growth of students versus the percentage growth of teachers versus the percentage growth of district administrators.
And this is the growth of sheer numbers of people. How many students, the percentage growth of students, teachers versus people running the show, right?
Correct.
The deep state,
yes.
The administrators, the quote bureaucrats. And George, what did the graph show?
Parents, you're going to have to sit down, okay, because this floored me. From 2000 to 2019, the percentage of student growth was 7.6%. And this is nationally. And this comes from the U.S. Department of Education. So this isn't like some made-up statistic.
Yeah.
This is reading the U.S. Department of Education statistics. 7.6% students. 8.7% teachers. District administrators, 87.6%.
Almost 90%.
Almost 90% growth. Why is it that for a 7.6% of student growth, you just need 8.7% teacher growth, which that seems like it's well balanced, right? But then why do you need an almost 90% administrator growth?
Yeah, we're not talking about teachers here.
No.
Growth. We're talking about the people who are, I guess, in charge of teachers, who are running the show behind the scenes. To be honest with you, George, I'm not even sure what all these people do. I know that we have district offices. Do these include, I guess it would include principals and on up.
Yes. Yes, so everybody that's in the administration at the school level and then at the school district and the school district offices, basically everybody there is an administrator. They're not, in a classroom teaching kids.
Right.
So that is what is happening. Now, one of the other important statistics to also understand is that when we talk about administrators, we also have to look at just the administrative state in America as a whole, so beyond education as well. So the administrative state has somewhere over 20 million employees at the federal, state, and local level. And it has been determined that directly or indirectly, these 20 million administrative state employees rule over half the economy, which means basically that they're ruling all of it. You know, they have the biggest effect on the U.S. economy.
I don't think this is hyperbole. This has been true. People have been warning about this for many, many decades. What we have to realize, George, is that these are mostly unelected officials. Now, obviously, school board members, they are elected, but they in turn hire people, right, to help them with this who become part of this administrative state. But this number 20 million, this includes federal agencies, but also state government agencies.
Yes.
So when you combine that, this is a huge percentage of the U.S. population. And most of them are unelected. They have been given the power by either a federal Congress or state constitutions to pass regulations that govern all of our lives, including what happens in the school system.
So one of the things that popped into my mind, Mark, when I read these statistics and I saw this graph was I was reminded of so many teachers that come up to you and I after our conferences, after our speaking engagements, and they share their stories with us. And so I just kind of put a summary, bullet point list here of the kind of things that we've heard from teachers who are there, boots on the ground, and who have experienced this rise in the administrative state over the last 20 years. And these are teachers who have been teaching 30, close to 40 years, and they've loved, they love teaching. But very first thing that we learned from teachers was that we have to understand that the founding roots of the NEA, the National Education Administration Association, these teachers' unions all across the country, they are actually rooted in socialist and Marxist ideology. And because of that, what we are actually seeing is that they suppress any kind of free market, free society, ordered liberty, that has been discussed and taught, understood as the American experiment, the very unique American experiment. They just disparage that. And so they are, the trainers that train the trainer, the teachers that train the teachers, right? These are the leaders of the teachers' unions. And from the very beginning, their whole idea was to completely, disparage the American experiment.
And this brings up a question, George. I'm assuming, maybe wrongfully so, that this number, 87.6% of the rise in district administrators, does not include union members. So National Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers, it would not include those. The point being that when you include those numbers, and you and I know the unions have incredible influence over what happens in the school system. In fact, that's a lot of where their budget goes to make sure the people who are actually elected to these district administration posts are union friends.
That's another 5 million members on top of the 20 million we referenced.
Oh, my word.
Yes.
Incredible.
Yes.
Yeah. Talk about the rise of an administrative state.
Correct.
This is on steroids.
And so then you have the teaching profession is no longer focused on teaching, but on checking the boxes. This is something we've been hearing over and over from teachers. It's all about filling forms. It's all about legal considerations. Like, for example, a teacher today, if a child is crying, will think twice about putting their arms around the child and comforting the child.
Because that requires a form to be filled out, right? You got to justify it somehow.
Well, yeah. And if for some odd reason, the child goes home and tells the parents, and then there's a lawsuit, and then there's all these legal proceedings that happen. So there are just forms upon forms. The teaching profession is no longer coming in and, love the students, teach them the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic, and forget about all of the boxes that have to be, checked. In fact, Mark, I was reading from an article from The Atlantic 10 years ago, in 2012, and the author of this article was basically looking at the amalgamation of past studies that determine what is a great school, what makes a great school a great school. And they looked at the principals, they looked at the teachers, they looked at the policies, they looked at everything. And what it really boiled down to was two things. Number one, principals having a leadership style that empowered teachers to teach and not to deal with all of the the forms, the bureaucracy, right? Yeah. And then the second thing was teachers. The great teachers were those teachers who loved their jobs and had this like natural wit to them on making kids interested in learning. These were the two greatest factors.
In other words, leadership that empowered teachers to do what they were created to do.
Correct. And all those great teachers that they were able to find in the classrooms that in turn knew how to turn the right buttons and dials of their students to be intrigued about learning.
Yep.
All those teachers hated forms, hated, all of that. So as soon as the rise of the administrative state has been happening, and now they're burdened with all of this bureaucracy, guess what? That same teacher who loved going into the classroom, who knew how to push the right buttons and levers to intrigue students, to get students intrigued in learning, now they're going into that same classroom completely, they're
hemmed in.
They're hemmed in. Yeah.
I mean, it stands to reason because when you have that many administrators being hired, these people have to justify their positions.
Exactly.
Right? And how do they justify their positions? By creating work, paperwork, forms to fill out, processes to go through, check boxes to mark and be categorized and filed and data kept and data centers kept. All of this is a direct function of the rise in the administrative state.
So the third thing we keep on hearing from teachers is that social justice is the mission. It's no longer to teach children.
We're not making this up.
We are not making this up.
This is what we hear.
This is what we're hearing, boots on the ground. And in fact, Mark, you and I have talked, I think, peripherally on this topic in some of our past episodes. When we looked at the California Teachers Association, their annual business agenda items, when we looked at the NEA and their annual conference with their business agenda items and what they vote on as priorities,
it's never about reading, writing, and arithmetic.
It's never.
We have yet to see this. It's always about advancing the social agenda in the school system.
It's all about that. It's all about, dismantling the patriarchy, fighting against systemic racism. They even have like crazy things about, going against Donald Trump and supporting pro-abortion candidates. And it's all political. It has nothing to do with education.
That's right.
So teachers are getting tired of that.
So this is an interesting point, George. It's not only the rise of the administrative state, it's the political persuasion of the people in that administrative state. And most, if not, it's impossible to put an accurate percentage of this, but I think it's pretty transparent that most of them have a progressive mindset.
Yes.
So all of these people and all of this effort are going to advance the social justice as their mission.
Exactly.
And that's what teachers are telling us.
The fourth thing that we've heard more recently is all the lockdown policies. The teachers' unions pushed for school lockdowns. They pushed for masking. They pushed for strict quarantine protocols in the name of then higher pay. Or saying, well, you cannot allow any more charter schools to open up in this district. They put some very crazy demands. In fact, the United Teachers of Los Angeles, that particular chapter of the teachers union, basically said our teachers will not come back teaching in person until we get all of these lockdown policies and this masking requirements and vaccination, and we want 5% increase in pay, and we don't want any more, charter schools to open up. So basically, the teachers union were holding the students hostage and the parents hostage. They knew that the lockdowns weren't working. They knew that lockdowns actually harmed the students' ability to learn because trying to learn virtually in an environment that the teachers have never been trained to teach other kids, because we do have, school choice options out there that do teaching over a virtual environment.
Right.
But they've learned how to do that. They've mastered that. Okay. And there's a good way to do it and a bad way to do it. The bad way to do it was clearly shown to us by the teachers union. The masking of children, right? Talking about,
it may come back, George.
Yeah, preschool through fifth, sixth, third, fourth grade, as children are learning sounds and how to read and how to properly, learn grammar. They can't even see their teacher's mouth moving. How would they know how to read? And now, 2.5 years later, we are seeing all of the statistics come out that are absolutely atrocious, showing the illiteracy rate continuing, to skyrocket, showing that kids just can't do basic math, in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade. I mean,
the literacy rate today is lower than in 1830 that we have pointed out.
Say what?
Before the imposition of the whole public school system. It's incredible. But we also have vaccination mandates that have come out of this administrative state.
And out of this, now what we're starting to see is teachers are starting to see teacher shortages because teachers are saying, I'm not going to deal with all this garbage. And on top of that, you want me to get vaccinated? No, my health and my medical freedom is more important to me. So now they've created their own dilemma. So the teachers union has now created this dilemma where you have a bunch of teachers who were close to or even at retirement age who are willing to teach for a few more years, right? Be there to train the next, round of teachers coming into the system. They're like, we've had it. We've had enough of this.
And this probably tends to be the better teachers. More experienced, a little more conservative, right?
Yep.
Who are used to being empowered to do their job. These are the people that are leaving.
And then on top of that, we have disciplinary policies that have been changing where the most unruly of kids that are being not just disrespectful, but sometimes even attacking teachers physically.
Yeah.
They are not being expelled from schools. Then this all creates this, this vicious cycle where you're eliminating those good teachers, you're discouraging those good teachers. A while back, Mark, we had even, phonics that had been eliminated from public schools. The proper way of teaching kids to become literate. And then what does it do? Then the teachers union comes back years later once the statistics show the decline, in people's literacy. And they're like, oh, well, now we need special ed and now we need Head Start and now we need Title I schools. Guess what? Administrative state, more positions.
Need more people to run those jobs.
Exactly. And lastly, the one thing that teachers keep on pointing out is that there is this huge conflict of interest with the teachers union and school board members.
Yeah.
Because teachers unions are putting up millions of dollars to put in at the school board level their own candidates, and these are the candidates that end up negotiating through the collective bargaining agreements their contracts. How is that not a conflict of interest?
Well, if you're a teachers union member, it's a virtuous cycle, right? You're ensuring your own livelihood.
And so, Mark, all of these points really come back to a question that I never connected the dot with, but Larry Arnn really was pointed about this. Why such a drastic growth in the administrative state and the educational bureaucracy? It comes down to one question. The question is, whose children are they?
I think that's right.
Because embedded in this question is a different set of questions. Who gets to decide what children learn? And then you go down another layer. Who decides what to tell children about sex or about our history?
Yeah.
Which person or persons, which party or parties have the best interest of the child? Are these decisions the province of professional educators who claim to be experts, or are they the province of parents who rely on common sense and love to guide them? You see, raising a child has always been difficult and expensive. But with rare exceptions, it has always been true that the parents who conceive the child raise him the best. And throughout American history, it has been thought that the family is the cradle of good citizenship and therefore of free and just politics. Public education is as old as our nation, but only lately has it adopted the purpose of supplanting the family and controlling parents. And here's a key quote that Larion closes off his article with, and he says, "One can look in history or in literature to see the danger of where the idea of supplanting the family might lead. Study the education practices that existed in the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany and that exist today in communist China. Or read the terrifying account in Orwell's 1984. They tell us that children, by distorting their natural desire to grow up and end their dependence, can be recruited to the purpose of despotic regimes, even to the extent of denouncing their parents to the state."
Which is happening today.
So we do not yet have this in America, but we do have children being turned against their country by being indoctrinated to look on its past, of which all parents, of course, are in some way part of, as a shameful time of irredeemable injustice. We also increasingly have children being encouraged to speak of their sexual proclivities at an age when they can hardly think of them. So it comes back to, who owns the children? The choice is really only between two possibilities. It's either the parents who have taken the trouble to have them and to raise them, and who in almost all cases will give their lives to support the child for as long as it takes, and even longer, or is it the educational bureaucracy, which is more likely than a parent to look upon the child as an asset in a social engineering project to rearrange government and society? And Mark, sadly, the latter is happening today.
It absolutely is, George, and unfortunately, it's accelerating. So parents, you are on notice that you have to control this, and it starts by being a voice, being an advocate for your child in the public school system. It also starts by making sure you understand the issues on every election day and making your vote count. We've talked about this on previous episodes. You are the answer, ultimately, to the problems that our children are facing in the K through 12 public education system, which will eventually impact all of us. Well, that's all the time we have for today, but we want to encourage you to visit our website, protectourkidsnow.org. You can go there and download and share our brochures. You can watch, and we encourage you to share our many videos. You can download our How to Start a Private School guide and share that with your pastors and elders. And George and I speak all over the country on these issues, and if you would like us to speak at an event that you're having, you can request a speaker by pushing the button on the front page of our website. POK's mission is to inform parents about dangerous public school indoctrination and alternatives to public schools. And we rely on donors to do this. However, our donor revenue is always unpredictable. And that's why we want to invite you to join our Guardian Angels program by making a recurring monthly donation. This will enable us to help more parents get their kids out of the public schools. To learn more, visit protectourkidsnow.org and /guardianangel. Well, that's all the time we have for today. George, thank you for this incredible research that you did, and we look forward to talking with you next week.
You've been listening to Say What, the radio ministry of Protect Our Kids, where they seek to inform and equip concerned citizens about the crisis in American public education and the forces working against our children. Join us at this same time every Saturday as attorney Mark Schneider and Pastor George Rosca Jr. unpack the issues so that we can better safeguard our nation's children. For more information about this program or Protect Our Kids, email the show at info@protectourkidsnow.org. That's info@protectourkidsnow.org. And join Mark and George right here next week at this same time for another episode of Say What.